Hi everyone, it's Sharon here. And I wanted to talk a bit about suffering, especially in relation to the previous video about um, the illusion that is created so that there can be experience. So, we in the Invincibility membership have been looking at non suffering and non attachment. And the recognition that that brings that actually humans tend to be quite addicted to their suffering. We quite like it. Because, like an addict, if you were given an option and told all you need to do is have a slight adjustment in your mindset and you can end your suffering, most people wouldn't believe you and they'd want to carry on with their addiction. So, we've been looking at the subject of suffering and why we are so attached to it. That's why we are also looking at detachment. And the question came up from one of the members um, that they understood that the mind is the creator of all suffering. And it is. The mind is the creator of all suffering. Um, but what the member was asking is saying, well, I understand that the mind is the creator of it, but why would it create pain and suffering? So I wanted to talk about that. So if we accept that the mind is the creator of all suffering, and in spirituality, what we tend to say is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And when we say that, what we say is that, like, physical pain that you might create from an injury or a mild illness or even a chronic illness, maybe we can't escape that. But what our mind says about that and how the mind responds to that, that is within our control. It is within our mastery. And therefore, we don't need to suffer. And that is the general spiritual line, if you like, around pain and suffering. And if you've watched the previous video, and I do recommend you do watch the previous video, I sort of realized very clearly that everything in the world of experience is an illusion. So actually, even though we say pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, pain too is also part of the experience and therefore is also part of the illusion and therefore it is also optional. So I've been playing with this quite a lot and I've been doing it for a couple of years around the idea that if we believe that we have a body, then of course we believe that pain is inevitable. Of course, we might well believe that disease is something we can't escape. It's inevitable. But is it? Every once in a while, you get people who seem to defy the belief, and that's what it is, a belief, that the body ages, it gets ill, and then it dies. So if you watch the last video, you will know that I've said that life is an illusion. Therefore, death is also an illusion. It creates a finiteness that gives our experiences meaning. And therefore, also our bodies are an illusion. Our mind is an illusion. Everything in the world of experience, even the earth we are living on, is an illusion. So at one level, there is a physical truth. At another level, we're energy. At another level, we are consciousness and awareness. So it really does depend on what level you're focusing on as to whether you believe it to be true or not. And just keep in mind that these are all beliefs anyway, in the realm of experience. So we have these experiences created for us just so we can have some shits and giggles in the playground of life. We weren't really meant to create suffering. I believe we were made out of love. We weren't really meant to create suffering, but we were given minds, which gives us free will. And the free will is really the power of choice. And when you give humans the power of choice, apparently they like to create pain and suffering. They create many beautiful things too, but they also create quite a lot of pain and quite a lot of suffering. And so, why would the mind create it, is the question. Why would the mind create pain and suffering? On a personal level, The mind creates suffering because it believes in the limitation. That's the short answer. It believes in the physical world. It believes in life. It believes in death. It believes in everything that it has been told. Because remember, the brain comes in, or the mind comes in as a clean slate, not your soul, but your mind comes in as a clean slate. And you have to be told everything. You're a baby. You can't barely see when you're born into this world. You can only hear, probably. You can eat, you can function, but you don't really know anything. You get told everything. You get told your name. You get told who you are, who your parents are, who your caregivers are. You are told this is mum, this is dad, mama, dada. This is a dog, this is a cow, this is a sheep, whatever. You're told everything. So without being told, what would you know? Well, you wouldn't know very much, and therefore you wouldn't be able to function in the world of experience. So we are given these labels and instructions in order to navigate the world of experience. And some of these are so embedded that we no longer realize that it's something we were told. We just think that's just how it is. That's just the nature of reality. That's just the nature of life. And pain is inevitable. And suffering probably is too. And we don't know where we pick this up from, but somehow we do. And so unless you go back, and that's what the spiritual path is really truly about, is going back and checking in with yourself and saying, actually, is this true or is it not true? It's the path of truth, right? So if it doesn't feel true for you, you can let it go. How could you? It's not of any value. Why? Because it's not true. It's not true. There's no value. You can let it go. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to be worried about it after it's gone. You don't really need it. And so we often talk about the spiritual path as a path of letting go. And we're not letting go of anything good. We're letting go of untruths. We're letting go of falsities. And so there comes a point where you have to start examining the contents of your mind, because that's where all the concepts are. That's where all the beliefs are. That's where all the identities are. That's where all the falsehoods are. You know, we tend to talk about our soul being living in our hearts, heart being a portal to the higher realms, which is true. But we don't tend to lead with our hearts. We tend to lead with our minds. And the mind believes everything it's told. It believes in the concepts. It believes in reality. It believes you need to eat, you need to drink, you need air, you need a body, you need a mind, you need all of these things. It's very need based. You need it. Without it, what would there be left? Oh, there'd be nothing left of any value. And so that's where the mind starts to really dominate. Instead of the heart being our central guiding force, our mind tends to dominate our lives. And the mind only knows what it has been inputted in this lifetime. It's not like the soul, it's not like the spirit, it's not like the higher self that is attached to all information in the universe. It is very limited in what it knows. It only knows what you've inputted in your lifetime, in this particular one singular lifetime. So if you've never experienced it, if you've never heard of something, it doesn't mean anything to you because it's not in your mind. So the mind then has the ability to create stories. It interprets through the brain. It interprets experiences. So you could be in a room of a handful of people. You all have the same experience. Same words are spoken, the same people is there, the same furniture, surroundings, environment are the same, but each one of you can walk away with a different experience. How is that possible? If the world is objective, how is that possible? It's not possible, right? Because the world is subjective. You created it. You create it through your perception of the mind. You create it. Even your eyesight is created by perception of the mind. So we have to, once we start to accept that everything in the world that we perceive is subjective, created by us, created by our minds, then we start to recognize that we are also the creators of our pain. We are also the creators of our suffering. And we can buy out of that anytime we choose. Again, if it's a falsity, you can let it go. Why? It's of no value. The limitation is of no value. The problem is that mind believes it needs it. And this is why we let go of our needs. That's why you see, like, this is why we have monasteries, right? And we have nunneries. If you let go of your needs, what remains? You'd say, well, there's nothing. Cool. You haven't got anything. You haven't got possessions. You haven't got this. Yeah, but that's the whole point. You let go of unnecessary needs. You don't need these things. Once you let go of your needs, you can start to see that what's left is actually more valuable than all the clutter. And that's why we start decluttering our minds. That's why we start detaching from the mind. This is why we start clearing out the falsities. And so the mind creates pain and suffering because it believes, it has a belief in its own limitation. And it doesn't know any different. So the only way to come out is to move the guiding force in your life from your mind to your heart, from your heart or soul, whatever you want to call it. And that has got a higher wisdom, a higher knowledge. But even the soul, you could even step out of that belief system as well if you really wanted to. And so sometimes the mind creates pain and it creates suffering from its own, well, most of the time it creates it out of its own fear, of its own limitation. So it imposes another level. So the world is already limited, right? And yet it creates another level of limitation. And then fear is another limitation, a projection of the future that hasn't even happened, but it will stop you from attempting something. Or the past, he says, that was hurtful, that was scary. I didn't like that. I'm going to stop myself from experiencing that again. I'm going to put a limitation on you. And so we've got all these millions of limitations on us, limitations on our experience, because the mind is scared. And the mind used to be scared of danger. And now it's just perceived danger. And now it's not even perceived dangers or threats to our actual life and existence. It's a threat to our emotional happiness or whatever. So the mind is taking a limitation and adding layers and layers of limitations on. And that creates quite a lot of suffering, creates quite a lot of internal pain. Because we weren't meant to be limited. We were supposed to be in a playground of fun, of infinite experience. And somehow the mind has turned it into a hellish landscape of pain and suffering. But that was free will, and every soul evolves at a different level. Every soul has to go through many lifetimes in the world of experience. Without stepping outside of that. And therefore, it's a self-perpetuating world of experience. This recreated. As we recreate it, we learn something under the pretext of time. We learn, we grow, we evolve, and then as we evolve, we sort of evolve past the desire to suffer, and we evolve past the desire to have pain, and we want to move into a higher realm where these things are no longer necessary for our learning and experience. So pain and suffering is a good catalyst for evolution. It's a really good catalyst for human evolution. We tend to hopefully learn from our own suffering, and we don't want to go back to that suffering. So we kind of say, okay, let's try and change something. So suffering leads to change very often. Sometimes it really doesn't, but hopefully it does. Told you, people are addicted to their suffering. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't create change at all. Sometimes people just continually suffer. But ideally, suffering leads to change, maybe even awakening, and then that awakening will accelerate you towards the path of truth. And that path of truth means that you can step out of that suffering into a realm of unlimited experience. And you can still enjoy experience. You just don't have the pain. You just don't have the suffering. You can have challenges to help you along the way if you want. But yeah, the mind believes in itself. It believes in the limitation. And that is why it creates suffering. But you can step out of it. And that's the good news.